We've got our most exciting update in a few minutes. We are now inside terminal count. And again, I'm not the expert here. We've got Alex Cagnola with us, who's going to explain what that means and how did we get to this point.
Right, so the test conductor just came on the audio and alerted us that we're about 9 minutes away, actually. So we'll be getting some pretty regular updates here. We'll be hearing some activation of some different components on the rocket before the hot fire. And obviously there's a lot of steps that we'll be hearing going into the actual hot fire with things like we talked about CAPU activation, move to internal power. If there's any kind of audio that might slow down the terminal count, they'll kind of come on the air and tell us that too. But right now we are in that final sequence that lasts, 8.5 to 8 minutes. So we're going to sit back and kind of listen for the updates from the test conductor.
And this wasn't one person's decision. This is a full group that has to make the decision that we are ready to keep going.
Right, every big decision.
Hold on 1 second. What I do want to remind everyone now is that you're actually able to hear the control room audio just like we are. So what we're going to try to do is when the test conductor starts talking, I'm going to rudely cut Alex off in the middle of what he's talking about and try to make sure that we can all listen in, give him enough time to understand that call. So we just missed one. Again, this is a live show, but I want to get back to how we got to this decision. And again, it's not just one person.
Right, that goes back to, we have a great team working all the engineering issues, and then obviously, they kind of come up with a story about what's going on, and they present that in the best way possible to our program management and to, those who are the big decision makers. And so every time we have a big milestone like this, we have to poll the whole board. Everyone brings up their concerns, or if they think, going forward, what they think, and then do a go, no go poll. And it sounds like everyone was a go. So we're moving forward terminal count.
Okay, and again, you can hear some of that test conductor audio. I'm sure you couldn't hear that one because you were talking, giving us a great explanation. But now I do want to know, so within these 10 minutes, we're now about 7 minutes, I understand. What are we expecting to hear from the test conductor?
Right, you'll hear a test conductor say a few things like initiate purge start, and that purge will be a nitrogen gas purge inside the engine section. That's part of just the normal sequence of purging the whole area around the engines before you initiate hot fire. You'll hear move to internal power. That's a big one. We'll take all the boxes and all the batteries, everything on board. The core stage will be powering itself, almost like you would have during launch. And then you'll move into ALS start, which is our pre-ignition engine start, and that'll be right before, 30 seconds before T0, where we'll power up the engines.
Okay, so we're about
6 minutes on my mark.
We just heard about 6 minutes. Was that right?
That is 6 minutes away, so they're going to start really having a lot more calls on the audio. We might even hear some things being turned on inside the core stage. So, obviously we'll start talking less as we hear more audio comes through.
Okay, sure. What will those things sound like?
So you'll hear TCC, more and more calls. They'll be talking to more in the control room with individuals. They'll be talking to people.
Go ahead, sir.
Looks like somebody opened a terminal TCS window.
Yeah, nobody else should have the TCS view. If you have it open, please close it at this time.
So right, they're just working through some small things between all the monitors. They're opening and closing certain things that need to be closed inside the Rocky, from the stand. They're going to completely secure the stand with everything that needs to be done before the hot fire. And really, it's just the final preps before we do initiate engine start.
Okay, again, you are all hearing what we're hearing. We're pausing whenever the test conductor is speaking or other people in the control center are speaking because we're trying to learn what's happening to the rocket.
On my mark.
It sounds like about 5 minutes away on their mark. Again, remind us who's the one in our ear. What's that role?
So that's our green run test conductor, and he's kind of been the one in control of all the green run test cases, not just this one leading up to this point. So he has a great working relationship with all those that are on the test team. And so, obviously right now we're in T-minus 5 minutes. So there'll be a lot of activation going up until we do hot fire. So, like we said, CAPU spin up, move to internal power, purge sequence, and then we'll move into engine activation. It's all going to come pretty
I'm going to
clear.
pause you for a second.
TCC violation, we're holding at T-minus 4 minutes, 47.
I copy that.
BTD, PEA, it's the Delta P sensors.
Okay.
Pre-plan.
Copy that. We'll wait till we get to the hold at T-minus 440. We're in the hold time. We're in the go. And if you want to go ahead and use that pre-plan.
DLH, let's go to manual mode and try to dial in the lead Delta P, please.
if this is the right time. Can you break down what we just heard?
So they're moving into some final sequencing. Obviously, you can see on the flame bucket, they've now initiated max water flow into that flame bucket, so you'll be seeing a lot more mist coming from that flame bucket.
We do have 2 minutes 35 seconds for the hold, so
It looks like you need to come down.
So we are 2 minutes 35 seconds before the 1 minute and 40 hold, from what I understand. So obviously that 1 minute 40 hold will be the last little bit.
The hold timer.
Before we do start up the engine, so it's very exciting.
You're getting excited.
Yeah,
I can hear
absolutely.
everyone around us getting excited. This is great. And what we're going to make sure we do is we have to make sure we're all being
You're
safe
clear to,
here.
reset that whenever you get ready. We are at 1 minute and 30 seconds in the hold timer.
Okay, if you're in the band, go ahead and reset MPS 17, please.
So we're going to go ahead and take a step back. We're going to put our ear protection on. So we'll be moving into internal power, and again, putting our ear protection on, listening in from here on out, and observing this major milestone on America's return to the moon with Artemis.
Enable the sequencer.
Sequencer activated. Resume and count on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Now we're counting down. The sequencer is counting. Coming up on T-minus 4 minutes on my mark. Mark. And T-minus 3 minutes on my mark. Mark. Coming up in T-minus 2 minutes on my mark. Mark. Coming up on T-minus 130. Mark. Coming up in T-minus 1 minute on my mark. Mark. If, for all personnel, report that you're ready to go. PEA.
Go.
AEA. HEA.
Go.
REA. Go. NTC. We're go. All right, we're in ALS. We're going to engine start. And we're in the press count. Engine start. We're in the press count. All for South, please continue to monitor your system. And grass is in control. All right, plus 25 seconds.
DDRA, we did get an MCF on engine 4.
Copy that, but we're still running. Still got 4 good engines, right? Got that. Passes through 60 plus 60 seconds. Get into our first gimbal profile.
BTG, SE.
Gotcha.
CCC violation on rest.
And we got a shutdown. Now personnel. Shutdown looks like let's all go to page 656. Page 656, please. And all personnel, it's going to be post-hot fire or shutdown securing operations on page 656.
BTD, I need you to verify with the engine guy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Shutdown standby.
Yeah, all personnel, that does take us to the last page there on page 632. AR1, if you would, on step 4.241, please verify first stage engine 1s and 4 have shut down for that step, and we have a safe engine shutdown.
We are post-shutdown standby, engines 1 through 4.
We just saw the core stage of SLS fire up. Of course, we also heard some test conductor come in, so we want to go straight to Alex. Alex, can you please describe to us, first of all, what we saw and then what we heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we had a very successful initiation of the engines. The beginning of our thrust profile there when we were firing for the first minute or so, we obviously are getting some really good data coming through. But like we said earlier, this is a test. We have test commit criteria and we have certain boundaries that we have to keep all the operations under. So, we really are trying to make sure that, everything's operating properly and safely. So, the test team was kind of seeing some data that they might not like. And so obviously, our engines were shut down ahead of the 8-minute scheduled time frame. But we do have a lot of good data to go look at. And hopefully, we can move on from here and maybe get, see what's going to go on further. So
I was looking at your face when that started lighting up, and that was incredible. We saw the cloud forming. We both saw rainbows just forming right over our side. Just how did it feel in those first few seconds?
Yeah, it's amazing. It never really gets old, that feeling that you get, in your chest, or, seeing, just how powerful those rockets are when they're testing. So, Obviously, it was an awesome thing to see, and I can't wait to get the core stage to Kennedy and get ready for launch.
And you told us, over 8 minutes we might have had tons and tons, terabytes worth of data, but we already have data just from right now. What are they going to do with that right away?
Right, and so just like all of our other green run tests, we have teams that are going to go and break down that data and kind of see what we're seeing in our profiles, right? And so, that all goes into the profile that we'll use for launch eventually at Kennedy. So, obviously there's a lot of things to look at the data. We kind of talked about, over the span of our green run testing, we have roughly 800 terabytes of data, and that's a lot of data. We're talking about it's hard to grasp how much data that is. So, we'll obviously take the time to dig through everything, and then obviously have a path forward from there.
And I know it happened really fast, but can you tell us what the people were talking about that we could hear from the test conductor in that audio?
Right, so after we did engine initiation, they're kind of going through and monitoring everything, right? So obviously once we are actually firing the engines, we have to look at, all of our engine readings when it comes to temperatures, how they're reacting, how they're moving, and all that stuff. We were just getting into our gimbal profiling test, which is, moving the engines around right before we terminated the hot fire. So we're obviously going to have a lot of good data to look at.
Great. Thank you, Alex. I'm so glad you're here. And so as the engineers gather data from today, we look ahead to the next steps. This core stage will be lifted out of the B2 test stand and refurbished to patch up that orange foam insulation. Then the team will load it onto our Pegasus barge about as long as a football field to make a 6-day journey from the Gulf of Mexico to our Kennedy Space Center on Florida's Atlantic coast. There, it will be stacked in the iconic vehicle assembly building with other elements of the SLS rocket, including the twin solid rocket boosters, which our teams have already begun stacking on the mobile launcher. The core stage will join the boosters and then be stacked with the upper stage. And then the Orion spacecraft with the launch abort system on top. All of this work putting us on track to roll out to Launch Pad 39B for a liftoff later this year on Artemis 1. We are going to pause again and just talk about what we just experienced. The stage was rattling that we're on here. We saw everybody with their phones out who's able to be here today. Talk us through from right when the engine started. What did we just see?
Right, so you kind of, those last minute and a half, right, you're kind of hearing the test conductor talk about, move to internal power. All go for ALS startup, which is engine startup, right? And then at T-0, you heard the final count where they're kind of polling all the people who are really watching the critical components of the rocket, those critical readings we need right before we initiate engine start. So after, everyone kind of gave their go, we initiated engine start, obviously. And that ALS, you kind of saw the pre-burners going on that rocket. You kind of see some of the sparks flowing, right? And that's all part of the test. And then right before they start flowing, that fuel and that mixture, and then it ignites, and you see it at T-0. So that's kind of what we were seeing running up to the test. And then after that, you obviously saw the plume and then the rest of the test as well.
And we saw a few different angles. We were up really close to the engines. How were we able to see that?
Well, obviously we have, the cameras and all of our views on the standard, obviously well-engineered cameras, very protective casings and all that. It's all important that we not only get the data, but all the video and the view of what exactly is going on.
Great. Well, thank you again. We may still come back to you.
We're going to engine start. And we're in the press count. Engine start. We're in the press count. Call for south, please continue to monitor your system. And grass is in control. All right, plus 25 seconds. DDRA, we did get an MCF on engine 4. Copy that, but we're still running. So we got 4 good engines, right? Got that. All right. We'll pass us through 60 seconds. Get into our first gimbal profile.
BTD is SE.
Gotcha.
DCC violation on the rest.
And we got a shutdown. All personnel. Shutdown looks like let's all go to page 656. Page 656, please. Okay, all personnel, it's going to be post-hot fire or shutdown securing operations on page 656.
BTD, I need you to verify with the engine guy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Shutdown standby.
Yeah, all personnel, that does take us to the last page there on page 632. AR1, if you would, on step 4.241, please verify first stage engine 1s and 4 have shut down for that step, and we have a safe engine shutdown.
We are post-shutdown standby, engines 1 through 4.
We just saw the core stage of SLS fire up. Of course, we also heard some test conductor come in, so we want to go straight to Alex. Alex, can you please describe to us, first of all, what we saw and then what we heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we had a very successful initiation of the engines. The beginning of our thrust profile there when we were firing for the first minute or so, we obviously were getting some really good data coming through. But like we said earlier, this is a test. We have test commit criteria and we have certain boundaries that we have to keep all the operations under. So, we really are trying to make sure that everything's operating properly and safely. So, the test team was kind of seeing some data that they might not like. And so obviously, our engines were shut down ahead of the 8-minute scheduled time frame. But we do have a lot of good data to go look at. And hopefully, we can move on from here and maybe get see what's going to go on further. So
I was looking at your face when that started lighting up, and that was incredible. We saw the cloud forming. We both saw rainbows just forming right overside. Just how did it feel in those first few seconds? Yeah,
it's amazing. It never really gets old, that feeling that you get, in your chest, or, seeing, just how powerful those rockets are when they're testing. So obviously, it was an awesome thing to see, and, I can't wait to get the core stage to Kennedy and get ready for launch.
And you told us, over 8 minutes, we might have had tons and tons, terabytes worth of data, but we already have data